I'd like to call the meeting of this Glens Zoning Board of Appeals, the March meeting, to order. First order of business is the approval of the January 16th, the minutes from the January 16th meeting. Do I have a second? A second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstained? You were here. Okay, so that is so moved. Moving to old business, we have area variance 23-0005, colloquially known as the Fitzgerald Project. Please step up, state your name and address for the record.
All right. Good evening, Tom Center, Hutchins Engineering, representing Fitzgerald Brothers. I also have Ryan Fifield and the general manager and also our counsel here tonight. After last meeting, we did meet with Bill Norton and Jeremy Schneibel down at the Water and Sewer Department. As you can see by their letter, they had 3 comments in there. The first comment, basically, they're looking for some additional direction, and I believe that needs to come from the planning board. As far as how to apply the design manual in the code. I think there was, just a little bit of question in their mind is how, which direction are we going to go with this? And that normally comes from them, from the planning board on these projects. And then number 2, again, we agree that once this issue is resolved, we can change the stormwater calculations. I think the biggest issue is, how are we going about this? We're in a gray area. We're less than an acre of disturbance, so we're not in a design manual notice of intent project. So we can do some things with the infiltration trenches, is make them retention areas as opposed to infiltration devices. Eliminate exfiltration. We still have, our proposed runoff from the site is still less than the existing that runs off the site. And also with this project is a little different than most projects that you see because this work is already done. This project is a little backwards. It's already all the stormwater is already going in the direction towards the back of the lot. With the wing swale curb on the east side is already involved, and all the stormwater is now going back. Anything we do, including the stone trenches or the pond, is only going to make it better. And we've had a lot of rain in the last couple of months, so we really haven't seen an issue. We haven't had any complaints from the neighbors. We haven't washed anybody out on the backside. So the pond that we're proposing and the infiltration trenches and the devices to get the water towards the back of the lot is only going to make the project better. And we can address the other labella comments. We believe we can address them once we have some direction in regards to the design manual's application and the code. But all in all, I think we've kind of addressed the neighbors' issues, and then now we're just kind of into the minutia of the design manual and the code review part, and working with Jeremy Schneibel and Bill Norton to clean up those items that are left.
I think last time we talked about getting a written agreement with one of the neighbors that you were doing work on their property. Anthony, do you recall?
Yes.
Yeah, we can provide that in the final submission to the with the project. That'll be part of that final package to the building department, planning department.
I think the board asked for it for here.
For here.
Because you're asking to.
Well, we did meet with the Tolstras. They were here. They didn't have an issue. I didn't know we needed it for this evening, but certainly we can provide. We still need to go that next step of going to site plan review and going through that process with the planning board. So certainly before we have final approval, we can get a written agreement and have the attorneys review it and go forward with that.
Okay.
Does anyone have a copy of the letter from the city staff that was referenced? Thank you.
Do we have what's our mechanism that we refer this to the planning board?
Well, it would have to go before the planning board anyway for site plan review.
Okay. So if we were to
They
approve
come
this,
in
it goes to
what
the...
happened is the typical is they go in, they make an application for a building permit. The code officer reviews it and says, oh, you're over your coverage or you've asked for shorter distances than what the code requires. So you need to go to ZBA first, And by the way, the project is also going to need site plan review.
Okay.
So in this case, though, what happened is the applicant already did some of the work. And it's my understanding, Phil, you put a stop work order in because, or you cited them?
Yes, we put a stop work order in the city of Glens Falls, any construction over 100 square feet requires a building permit. That includes driveways, retaining walls, as there was no permit, a stop work order, and that's when we discovered the lot coverage issues.
So why don't we move to the next speaker? Unless you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay, thank you. Should we move to Phil?
So this is, I know we're referring to final submissions, but there's not a final submission to us. This is the final submission to us as of right now.
It could be.
Right, you're being asked to decide if they should be given a variance for,
Coverage.
instead of 50% lot coverage, they're asking for 74.3%.
They were over already like 65.
And they were already over, so they're asking for additional. And the board, as I recall, was very concerned about the stormwater management.
100%.
They're building on someone else's property without a written agreement. I mean,
Yep. Yeah, all of that.
So should we go to Phil or to the public
Phil has
first?
any comments?
Phil, did you
Yes, I do.
Well, I just want to say, if there was an agreement that we talked about getting a letter from the adjacent residents,
Yes,
that would be part of our agreement.
correct.
Yeah.
You asked,
Not we approve it and then you give it after.
no, you asked for it in January.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening. So I've written,
Maybe we should just, for the people that are here, if they don't know who you are.
yes, Phil Cancelleri, Code Enforcement Officer and Acting Director of Building and Codes for Glens Falls. So a few things. I want to reiterate that while stormwater management is obviously very important, this board's purview is granting variances. And there are the 5 questions, which I'm sure you're all aware of granting a variance. And it is my office's position that those questions haven't been satisfied. And it should also be noted that this work was done without a permit. There was issues getting it to stop. There was also issues getting the area variance application in. We discovered this issue on June 9th, and it wasn't until the September meeting that we got an application. And and my written letter for the record, I want to read in. Mr. Rice, members of the board, the Glens Falls Building Department became aware of the lot coverage issues regarding this property on June 9th, 2023. At this time, we do not believe that the applicant has satisfied the 5 questions that should be considered when granting an area variance. It is also worth noting that a building permit was not applied for when the property was being repaved and proper review was not able to be conducted. While the applicant's design professional has submitted a full stormwater management plan to this board, there are still questions left to be answered, both by our third-party plan review, or our third-party review team, Labella in this case, and by city staff. The design professional stated on the record at a previous meeting that they were in a gray area and could not comply with the New York State DEC requirements. I would like to note that New York State DEC does have considerations for activity less than an acre. We also, I'm not aware if the new addition was part of that, but the stormwater management does take into consideration the overall scope of the project and if there's special circumstances related to that disturbance of less than an acre. Stormwater management, as stated on the record, is under the purview of the Glens Falls Planning Board and ultimately should not be a main consideration for this variance application. This board must not only consider the 5 questions pertaining to the issuance of an area variance, but also the manner in which the city became aware of this issue, and that the board is reviewing an area variance after the work has already been completed without proper permits required by the state and city code. At this time, the Glens Falls Building Department recommends against the issuance of this variance and would urge the board to require the applicant to bring the parcel into compliance with the requirements of 22020 Light Industrial District.
That's 50%.
Yes. And they were as a pre-existing non-conforming of 63, I believe. And with the unpermitted work done last year, they are up to about 75. I think it's 74.6, just about 75. So they are currently 50% over the allowable lot coverage.
they could continue at their prior
Yes.
pre-existing non-conformity.
Correct.
Or another option, I'm just not trying to be a designer here for y'all, but you could rip out your pre-existing and then repave with permeable pavers or
Correct.
something to that effect to allow that
And again,
percentage to come down.
that would really be
To meet
a,
the same original threshold.
that would be a consideration of the planning board. You know, if you were to use some sort of permeable surface that was road safe, you know, then the lot coverage would still be maintained.
Yep.
I have a legal question again. If we deny this variance, it still can go to the planning board for resubmission?
No.
It's their review is contingent upon us approving
That's it.
If a project requires, typically in my office, if a project requires both a variance, either use or an area variance, and site plan review, we require that the variances be issued before site plan review, because if the variance is ultimately declined, then that could change what's being submitted for the site plan.
What was included in the September 2022 permit, and how is it different from what we're discussing here?
What was that?
The September 2022 building permit, what was included in that, and why? How is it different?
So that was before I was here. I would characterize the 2022 permit as a substandard application, which was quite normal at the time, before we revamped the department. Quite frankly, that application should have went for site plan review. You know, it was, I think it would be considered a substantial change in use on the property. So I believe that should have went in front of site plan review then. And ultimately, the increase in lot coverage came from losing that paved surface with the addition. So again, if the proper process had been followed in 22 with this project, then I don't believe we'd be here today.
And that's what brought it up to 64?
I believe they were already at 63.5 or 64 at the time.
Gotcha.
I've used Google Earth with historical imaging, and from 2019 to 1984, there was very little change, and then they built the new addition in the back, and then they increased the pavement for what they had lost for parking.
So this site has been, you know, up to this project, that is, has been non-conforming for decades, correct?
Correct.
But it's pre-existing.
Pre-existing non-conforming.
Yeah, I'm just trying to,
expand.
yeah, I'm just making sure that I'm understanding correctly. So they were operating with a permit from the city initially?
No.
No.
So the building that they built in the back had a permit. The repaving and additional pavement was something separate.
Okay.
So, and like, as stated, any construction activity, especially if it's going to affect permeability of the ground that's over 100 square feet, requires a building permit, whether that's a shed, a house, a retaining wall, pavement, concrete slab for your barbecue, whatever it may be. If it's over 100 square feet and it's going to affect permeability, it absolutely requires a building permit.
Okay, so there was a permit, it didn't include the pavement.
No.
All right. Do we know that if there were conversations between the previous your
Code enforcement officer?
Because we did run into many instances where it was there was plenty of verbal communication, not a lot of written communication, and so
Yeah.
did-
Not that I'm aware. I would say with my interactions with the applicant at the time that the paving was discovered, did not seem that there was any prior discussion about it. It is my understanding, and I would acknowledge that most people would say that repaving did not require a permit. I believe that would be a commonly held belief in the city. As far as communicating with my predecessors, I started in November of 22, and I think my predecessors at that point had been gone for 6 or 7 months. I've met Mr. Celeste twice, and it was on a very casual. He stopped in to say hi to our clerk at the time.
Okay. Yeah, again, I'm just trying to get a timeline here because
So-
I know there was a lot of gray
A lot of change
Yeah.
and turmoil in the department. That's correct.
Yeah.
But I would state that anybody who's gone through an application understands the nature of the questions, the coverage aspect and all that. So if you're doing something that's affecting that, which you think you're aware of, you know what's involved in the process. It's not like you were ripping up your driveway and repaving it, that kind of thing. they expanded upon that.
I don't know, I've
And
never
they've
been,
been through the
I've never been in
process.
the field on this site,
Yeah.
but, I've been familiar enough with construction that, sometimes those guys do kind of push the envelope a little bit unintendedly, and then
Yeah.
we got to finish the project.
Well, and to be quite frank, when the unpermitted work was discovered in June, the directive from my department was to pave a ramp off of the cut from the city street because they have tractor trailers that go in and out, and we don't want to see damage done to the city street or the adjacent neighbor's property that had also been cut during the repaving. And then the next day when we came back to do an inspection on the warehouse in the back, the binder coat had been applied to the entire lot. So that's kind of where so there was a very clear directive not to extend past an on and off ramp, and then from basically the back of the property to the city street had been binder coated, the first layer of asphalt that resulted in the 75% lot coverage.
Well, you sent an email to the applicant Tuesday, June 13th, that said paving will require a new permit.
Yeah.
And that was before they did the,
Yeah.
Is there a way to deny the permit in such a way that we are requiring them to go back to 64 whatever percent?
that's what's the.
That's what-
They're asking for permission to go beyond.
Right, I
They're
know.
rejecting it, they have to do that.
Yeah, I'm just worried that if we deny it, we're required, that they would be required to go down to 50, which I don't think is practical.
No, it's pre-existing.
Go back to pre-existing.
Pre-existing non-conforming.
To Phil's point, area variances are judged by a 5-point test. It's a balancing test, so should we go through the 5 questions?
If you would.
Well, we should probably do seeker first, if you're going to use the motion.
No, I meant for more of a discussion.
Absolutely. I would
Yeah,
like
I'm
that. But before we do that, we should probably check and see if anybody else wants
I
to
agree.
speak.
Are you? Do you have any other questions?
Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a statement? I'm going to take that as a no. Is there anyone on the web, or whatever we call it? Would you like to speak?
This part of the applicant.
Sure. We're very welcome, please. If you could state your name, role.
Good evening. My name is Megan Basler. I'm from the town law firm, and I'm here for the applicant Fitzgerald Brothers. Before I start, I do have an email from Mr. Ryan Fifield to Philip Cancelleri. I can share. I only have one copy, so unfortunately I don't have multiple copies. But it is regarding to the building permit process and kind of what they went through regarding paving. And if you need Mr. Fifield to speak about this additionally, I'd be happy to.
One or two of them here, so
Yeah, you can flip it's the same email chain.
should I do this out loud?
Sure, or happy out.
Which one came first?
Whatever
Yeah, what do you want?
ask
I
me
can-
to take notice of.
If you require the applicant instead of me speaking of his email, I don't know.
No. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't
No,
matter.
no.
You're an agent.
You're addressing.
Right, I didn't know if you
are.
preferred.
Sorry.
So,
You're
So-
the legal counsel for them?
yes.
Hi, Ryan Fifield, Fitzgerald Brothers.
So this is an email correspondence from Mr. Fifield beginning on June 13th through June 15th regarding the paving application. So Philip did state on June 13th regarding the paving would require a new permit. He did not state it would require a variance, as from what I understand. And they did review. I can read the whole
I
thing.
think you should read the whole thing because it does actually reference lot coverage.
Yes, absolutely. So, 1, the paving will require a new permit as this is an increase in scope of work, and your addition that was on permit is almost done. As you mentioned to me, you are paving an additional 10,000 square foot of your lot, so ultimately you will need to go to the planning board for site plan approval, and you may need to appeal to the ZBA if you're going over the 50% lot coverage. Find the applicable zoning code below, 220-20, light industrial districts, maximum lot coverage. I spoke to DPW, and the city has a 25-foot right-of-way from each side of the center of the city street. By fan out, I believe you mean a street apron, which is a typically the concrete transition from the city street to the private driveway. If your intention is to widen the apron to allow an easier turn into your property, you would need to go to the city clerk's office at City Hall and apply for an encroachment permit, which is required for any work done on the city street or sidewalk. When you apply for the new permit, and this goes to the site plan review with the planning board, that will be addressed. The complainant stated last Friday they have had issues with runoff from your property, and since they were calling us about the work that was being done, they wanted to let us know about the runoff issues. Ultimately, the city engineer will be responsible for any stormwater runoff stipulations, and again, that would be addressed at the site plan review. And then I have clarification from Mr. Fifield. On June 15th, good morning, Philip. I wanted to give you an update on the building permit process. We have partnered with Hutchins Engineering and Van Dusen and Steve's land surveyors for the permitting process. Van Dusen is here now performing a topographical survey of the site, which the engineer needs for the first step. As I mentioned, we will be applying for the 3-inch binder level to allow our truck traffic to flow as normal without getting stuck on the crushed stone, which has been a little difficult this week. We have also identified the property lines and reviewed with our neighbor. My thoughts are when we meet next week, we can discuss the next steps needed, and I can fill you in where we are with engineering at that time. I did want to clarify that from my understanding that when they received a building permit in 2022, it was from Roselle, was their contractor who was assisting them with their process. They were not required to submit a site plan review, but that should not be a burden on the applicant, as they were not aware that they had to continue with that process. They have worked with 3 different building and code officials, including one that was from an outside contracted agency. Their contractor and paving company did not believe that they would need to seek a variance before beginning the paving project. And again, even if there was some type of other means for like other pavers that were used that still require a variance to get to their lot coverage, which I believe is 74.3%.
Not necessarily, the last part. You could have removed part of the existing that's over and repaved with something with a more permeable aspect, and that would have maintained the additional square footage, but at the same rate of coverage. So that is an option. I'm trying to tell everybody how to do it, but that's not 100% true. We just said the other.
I think the concern, and Tom can speak more elaborately on this, was the truck traffic and being able to manage that with the permeable pavers.
There are permeable pavers that can handle truck traffic.
Right.
Do we know the cost of the scope of removing the pavement and replacing with permeable pavers?
I have no idea about the cost.
Oh, all right.
They'd have to get a bid for that. And I have no idea.
Yeah, I imagine it's
I don't understand.
very different.
So when we went through Roselle Construction, we entrusted them to take care of the building permit process. We fully elaborated that we wanted to go around the building with the pavement as we have right now. It went through approval, the building inspector, we got the building permit, and I guess steps were missed if it was supposed to go to site plan.
In the building application process, it was narrated that you were going to do the.
Absolutely, 100%. The whole time that was our scope of the project, was to go around the building. Because we were adding doors into the end of the building, so we needed the ability to drive the trucks there. So it was communicated at that point.
Like, when you say doors, you don't mean regular operation?
Overhead doors
Right.
for the trucks to
Loading
drive.
dock type of-
Correct, yes, sir. And what Megan read was an email from myself to Philip, just explaining, because we had a conversation verbally, I wanted to get it in an email form, that we would be applying a 3-inch binder throughout the whole facility. His response was, thank you for the update, and that we would meet the following week. So I emailed him a couple days prior to the coating of the binder level. And since then, you know, we've partnered with Hutchins, with Van Dusen, and we're really trying to go through all the steps that we need to make this not only meet the stormwater expectations, but go above and beyond that.
But with that saying, you're applying binder, you said, so we've hired these people, but we're still going to continue doing what you've asked us to stop doing?
In a conversation with Philip, the building inspector, I asked him if we could do that binder level because we had only had crushed stone and we ran the risk of everything washing out at that point, which he replied that we could do that binder level while we go through the permitting process and just not do our top level of pavement.
Okay.
I'm assuming that was understood that that was potentially going to have to be ripped up. Meaning, you can do it to minimize your losses, but at the same time, there's no guarantee. He's not saying you're fine to do that, go ahead. He's just like saying, I understand you don't want to take 3 steps back.
That was never communicated, but right now I understand that's a possibility, yes.
Thank you.
When you went forward with Roselle's application, you or someone else or someone from your company didn't review the application with Roselle? Didn't have to sign anything for the building permit?
Roselle handled all that with the building inspector. Yeah.
So
We gave them the scope of work, what we wanted for the building addition, and the paving, where we wanted to go around.
Which is common practice
Common, yeah, for myself.
in the building industry.
Can we confirm that that was part of the building permit application?
So when I was reviewing the file, I found the site plan, which I thought I had grabbed it, I had not, and it indicated the area behind the expansion as a gravel area. Like I said, I wasn't here in 20, so I don't know whatever conversations have been held.
So you would do a building addition without a site plan to indicate its relationship of the entire site, et cetera, to indicate setbacks, et cetera. I've never seen that.
I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak?
I would just like to put a point of clarification in.
Certainly.
Mr. Fifield is correct. We did have a conversation about putting the binder coat on. As I had stated previously, that was only to protect the city street, to put an on and an off ramp as the trucks came on, so there wasn't a sharp curb that with heavyweight vehicles would repeatedly break down and cause stress fractures and cracks in the city street. So there was a verbal conversation. I went to do a final CO inspection on the 10,000 square foot addition, and when I showed up, I said, why is the entire lot blacktopped? So there was that conversation.
So your verbal communication was regarding only the binder for a certain area, not the entire binder?
I believe I had said up to 30 or 40 feet, and not an excuse, but it was a hectic time with the departures we had. Quite frankly, if this situation came today, there would be a stop work order. As empowered by the code, the non-compliant work would be ripped out, and then once compliance was gained, back to the pre-existing non-conforming, then the advice from my department would be, you can apply for a building permit, and then upon review of said building permit, if there was a requirement for site plan review or a variance application, we would advise the applicant at that time.
Thank you. All right, so as Allison thought wisely, we could go through and kind of talk about these measures here, balancing test as they call it. So the question was whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood, or there would be a detriment to nearby properties that would be created by the granting of the variance. To me, I see that the applicant is making a good faith effort to minimize those, that undesirable change. To me, I feel like there may be an undesirable change in that the water runoff is increased. But I'd like to hear your opinions on that.
Now, the undesirable effect, that would really clarify if we had that letter, correct? Would it be strong hold there?
For point 2.
So, I
There
mean,
is.
undesirable effect, I mean, if we're looking at the neighborhood right across the street, you have the East Field parking lot, which, I mean, I think is very relevant in looking at the character of the neighborhood.
It's a
So,
huge parking lot.
massive, massive. It's the parking lot at East Field alone exceeds the entire lot of Fitzgerald Brothers. So I don't think it would be a negative impact to the neighborhood.
Their answer was no stormwater runoff from the added asphalt pavement to the north of the building. Addition would be managed on the north end of the site. A paved wing swale was added to the east edge of the existing asphalt pavement area to direct runoff to the north-south of the parcel to address concerns from the neighbor, troll scrub to the east. That was their answer.
So there are efforts being made to control the water.
In my opinion, point one of the character of the neighborhood, I agree with you. It's unseen and it's very similar to similar. That's not what I'm objecting to.
All right, let's move on to the next one then.
But point two is,
Right. So the question is whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other feasible method. Anton's point, I think, I'll let you make it. Go ahead.
well, I think there are other methods to advance the square footage of pavable area and still maintain the excessive amount that they're over the threshold already. It will cost more money, but that is if you want to grow and stay and stay within, you're already 20, 15, 16, whatever it is percent over. Now 50% over that coverage allotment is quite large, and there are actions that can be done to have both parties coexist.
So do we need
I
to?
do appreciate, I would want to say this, I do appreciate the efforts put forth for the residents, adjacent residents. I personally do appreciate some of the actions that have been done with the swale and things like that.
I understand. I think we're getting one thing confused. You're talking about permeability, and the actual code is lot coverage. So there's no differentiation made between permeable coverage and it's lot coverage. It's not permeability. I understand where you're talking about permeable pavers or permeable pavement. The issue on this site is we have very tight turning radiuses. In our professional opinion, we had 3 engineers in our office who have done permeable pavers before, are very uncomfortable with doing permeable pavers on this tight of an area. It's not like there's just an area where they can back in and pull out. The area that we're talking about that we've added would be turning radius areas in even, in large trucks. And in this type of, and then you have to have a large, underlayment for your stone permeable area underneath. And knowing that this has been well compacted soil built over the years, we really didn't want to put anything under the pavement. As far as that, we don't know where our groundwater issues are, where our permeability is. What's our permeability? How big of a stone basin are you going to need? We did not yet. But again, we can take out infiltration and just do this with storage volumes with the pond built in the back and take off the rate going off-site. And that's what we really wanted to keep this to a low maintenance, type, and we've had issues with permeable pavement before. We've had issues with spalling, we've had issues with, especially with the turning. And a lot of it is the heavy truck and the turning. You get into pavers, you get into movement, even pavers, a lot of times what we're seeing the best effect with pavers is actually pouring a permeable pavement underneath and gluing pavers on top of that. And that's more in the residential section that we've done that. But to do that on this is a large area, and it's an astronomical cost to be frank with you. But what we're doing here with the stormwater management, we're actually taking the entire site with under redevelopment. We really only need to manage the additional 3,000 square feet that we're looking at. When you do redevelopment, you're only looking at the new, because we are actually trying to do something above and beyond, the code, by what we're doing here. So I think there's a little bit, kind of looking at it from 2 different directions. I tried to manage as much as I could on site, and looking at the code and make sense, and also protect the neighbors, and also keep it from causing a downstream problem.
So, in part of the application going for a variance is to the second point of how you're disturbing your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're doing a good job in addressing that, But that actually is part of the variance.
Well, I understand, and that's how we addressed taking care of the neighbors, is by managing stormwater that we didn't have to. That's above and beyond the additional, what we're seeking the variance for. What we're seeking the variance for is the additional 3,000 square feet of pavement, which is being managed in the pond. What we're going above and beyond were the comments that were brought up by the neighbors saying, you know, we had stormwater coming off over here, we were concerned about high groundwater, and that's where we did the wing swell on one side. So, you know, we kind of melted those into our design.
I have a question for Mr. Center.
Yeah.
Again, my office's issue with this is the protocol in which it was done. So, was your office involved with stormwater management before the stop work order was put on the paving?
No.
Was there any consideration to stormwater management with the initial project that the Glens Falls Bottling Company was doing when they were originally expanding the
No,
pavement?
as I've said before, I came in after the fact when they needed someone to address the variance and to address the stormwater. I came in after it was paved. I came in after
You were hired.
I was hired after all of this went down. And again, as a city resident, I'm looking at the best interests of the city too, and trying to protect the neighbors and trying to protect the runoff. And I think that's what we've done by taking that roof water that was going on to Tolstra's property, who they happen to be a client of mine, and I spent, an inordinate amount of time, at the applicant's knowledge to try to come up with, hey, this is what we're trying to do, work with them to try to make it better in the neighborhood. This is a company that's been here since 1960s. They've been there a long time. If you go up and down Dix Avenue, you'd see the two properties right to the west. Their stormwater, their entire driveway comes right out into the road.
So we're not questioning you, Mr. Center, we're not questioning the company.
Yeah,
We're here to review this
I'm just talking
application.
about the character
I
of
know,
the
but-
neighbor.
So we're reviewing the questions put forth in this
The
application.
zoning board of appeals is
Discussion.
oddly constrained when it comes to our decision
No,
making
understood.
process. We have to go through this, and as politics doesn't enter into it, our opinions doesn't really enter into it as much. So we're going to continue to read these. And,
Yep.
so the question here, this is where we start to run into something, whether the area variance is substantial. And we're looking at 9% more on top of an existing coverage of 64.
Their answer was the variance could be considered substantial.
It could, yeah. So that is something that we would balance, but to me that does seem.
I think it is substantial, but I know that this board, in its current makeup, has also granted residential variances with larger coverage. And in fact, just visually speaking, we have an applicant that we're going to review later tonight, where I dare say the entire non-residential structure is paved. So, given the industrial nature of this, is it substantial? It can be. Is it grossly out of character for what they're doing, their operation, and the character of the neighborhood, and the efforts they've gone through to mitigate it? I don't believe it's substantial when you put that in the proper context.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else on that one? Any opinions on that? All right. Next one, moving on, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. I feel like I'm sort of repeating myself in number one when I say again that I feel like the applicant is making a good faith effort not to do that. And that in the end, I feel like with all the flood controls that they are bringing into place, we're going to have a better situation than we did at 64% than we will at 75. That being said, going back to 3, I don't know if there's a way, this is for you, is there a way to approve it contingent on trying to decrease the coverage as much as possible?
Modifications?
Right, so you could approve it with a certain.
But we don't know what that is going to be.
Well, my question is similar, but can you approve it? And you were saying it could be contingent upon site plan.
Site plan review and approval with a stormwater management plan.
Right.
Approved by the engineering department and the
Right.
planning board.
Wording like up to 74%, something like that.
Well, their variance is already up to that.
Yeah.
Well, they're
Their
75,
request.
70, right. The variance application is that. I'm more concerned with all of the other aspects that have been made in good faith to to retain those aspects and for those to be reviewed and approved by
Absolutely.
another agency.
All right. Does anyone have any other opinions on 4? On that
So
one?
just to recap, we would go in the direction of looking for the planning board to
Well,
opine.
they would conduct site plan review, which would mean the full stormwater management plan, as well as reviewing agreements with the neighbors.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be moving forward on a conditional set number, it would be based off the planning board.
No, you would be granting, their application is to go over to the 74
Yeah.
point something %. You're either gonna make a motion to approve that or a motion to deny that. If you make a motion to approve it, it could be conditioned upon site plan review and approval, which includes a full stormwater management plan with agreements with the neighbors.
Okay,
Can we have conditional as well with the letter?
Yeah, yes.
Absolutely want that in there too.
no, that's
That's
exactly.
the agreement with the neighbors.
Yep.
All right, let's move on. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which may be considered but shall not preclude the granting of the area variance. There was some discussion about a previous contractor who may have led to this, some other confusions along the way. But in the end, I feel like this is self-created, but luckily this is an area variance where we can consider whether that, I'm losing a word here, but whether that overrules the entire application. Anybody else have any?
I think to a degree, it could be self-created, but I think there was failure on other entities, including the city and Roselle, by the sound of how this all came together. I think it was just a poor communication breakdown amongst all parties involved in this, and I think that should be part of the consideration here.
I think, but no matter what a consultant or a hired person does, it is ultimately, in this regard, the responsibility of the property owner to ensure they're following code and doing what you need to be doing.
All right. Any other opinions, anything else to add? Well, I came in with a fairly negative view of this, and I feel like my opinion has changed, which surprised me as much as anyone. So I would, first of all, would anyone like to make a motion?
Well, we need to do secret.
Oh, let's do seeker. I love seeker.
So with respect to seeker, I would classify this as an unlisted action because it is an area variance within a commercial area. So we need to review the Part 2 impact. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use or zoning regulation?
No.
No, or small impact. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of the use of the land?
No, you say yes?
Yeah.
Or small,
Small.
9% change?
Okay.
I'm going to say
Okay.
small.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
No.
No.
Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No.
No.
Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway?
No.
Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact existing public or private water supplies? No.
That supplies.
Public or private wastewater treatment utilities?
Yes.
Small impact or yes?
I would say
It's
yes.
small. What do we think, small or yes?
Small.
Small.
I haven't conflict with that.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. Will the proposed action result in adverse change to natural resources? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
Small. We have to say that there's something else we don't have.
It could be yes, but the applicant is looking to mitigate for drainage on site. Will the proposed action create a hazard to an environmental resources or human health? No. Based upon review of the Part 2, the board could issue a negative declaration.
Let us do that.
Okay?
So, I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion.
So Mike, well, you don't even know what the motion's gonna be.
It's for the seeker, right?
Oh, so we're doing the seeker motion?
Yeah, so
Oh,
it's a
okay.
motion that the
Oh, sorry.
CPA accept lead agency for Fitzgerald
Go ahead and
Brothers.
read this.
Yeah,
I would like to make a motion that the Glens Falls Zoning Board of Appeals hereby accepts lead agency status for Fitzgerald Brothers, owner or agent of the property located at, all right, 152 Dex, thank you very much. The board has determined, hold on,
it's an unlisted
this is an
action.
unlisted action. We've reviewed the short form,
Yeah,
environmental assessment form. Upon the documentation and discussion, issues a negative declaration.
and this is for the area variance only, not site plan review.
No.
Okay.
I do have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. So now, I would like to make a motion that the Glens Falls Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grant the application for an area variance for the project identified as Fitzgerald Brothers and located at 152 Dix Avenue, as presented at the meeting of March 18th, pursuant to the following criteria and shown by the applicant, that an undesirable change will not be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance, that the benefits sought by the applicant cannot feasibly be achieved by another method. Feasibility being cost, moving the underlayment, all manner of other considerations. That the area variance is substantial, but this does not prevent us from considering the application. It's 9% on top of the existing coverage, a total of something like 24% over the allowable coverage. But across the street, we have an example of a huge amount of pavement. So it would be silly, in my opinion, to block it on that basis. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse, the proposed variance will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, with the existence of a site plan review and approval with the neighbors to also work on their property to create swales and whatnot.
So it's subject to site plan review and the stormwater management plan and agreement with the neighbor.
Yes, please. And that while the alleged difficulty is somewhat self-created, we are still going to grant the area variance. Anything else I need to add to that? No. Roll call vote.
You have a second?
Oh, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Got Matt again. Starting with Dan. Anton?
Nay.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye. I'm aye.
Aye.
Nay.
So where were we? 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have 4 to 2.
Motion
So the
passes.
motion passes. Thank you very much. Move on to the next order of business. That was the longest one I think we've ever done. I'm glad to see it go. All right.
I don't believe the next two applicants are going to be here.
Yeah, that's probably good. And I don't know if whose responsibility it would be, or if you'd like to help us by reaching out to Mr. Armando to help him understand that if he is going to do this, he's got to redo his application. That first question is going to totally.
We've talked to him. I don't
All right.
know if he's in the crowd.
Are you calling that case? You're gonna-
Oh, sorry.
Yep. So the next application is the use variance, right?
Yes, please. I lost my page.
23.
Here we are, thank you. All right, so calling use variance 23-006 is Nevin Armando in the building. This is currently tabled. Can we have discussion on this without retabling it, or how do we go about this?
Just table it.
I'm inclined to continue tabling it.
The applicant's not even here.
Right.
As mentioned and noted previously, this is an incomplete application as it stands.
Exactly.
Yeah. The first question is, what is it, whether this is, the financial burden. He puts not applicable. The financial burden is the most important question. So,
Well, it was on January 16th, it was tabled at the request of the applicant, and then they're not here tonight, but I do have,
With no notice?
they were noticed.
No, with no notice to us that they would not be here.
Correct. I do have letters that were sent, and I believe there's someone from the public that wants to speak. Eric Greco, February 5th, 2024, to whom it may concern. My wife, child, and I reside at 8 James Court, Glens Falls, New York. Received a letter in regards of a building conversion for the property of 11 James Court, Glens Falls, New York. I do not agree with this property converting from a one-family home to a duplex, multiple-family home. My family and I moved into this neighborhood due to its nature of being residential, and we hope for that not to change. In addition, an email was sent to my attention from Tina Weber. Tina Weber states, I will not be able to make tonight's meeting due to date change. I'm not in favor of the change. When we bought in 1991 and built our house, we wanted R1. It will change the value of our neighborhood. Once it's a two-family, it can start to decline. I think that it's spot zoning. I and my neighbors fought to have Hudson Headwaters Health Network be cultural professional when they wanted it to be commercial to put drugstore in the complex. I would greatly appreciate it if you would read this into the minutes. In addition, there is another email from a Kathleen LaBelle. Dear Mr. Rice, as we discussed on the phone earlier this week, my husband and I are both against a use variance being granted for 11 James Court, Glens Falls. We bought our property because it was single-family housing in this neighborhood. We want it to stay that way. As we discussed, we are afraid that if a variance is granted, the property could become a two-family house or even used as an Airbnb. And that's from David and Kathleen LaBelle. And then we have...
please step up and state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name's Dan Bruno, and my wife and I reside at 15 James Court. And
What are your thoughts?
Chairman,
Thank you.
Attorney Judd, Deputy City Clerk, and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm here this evening to voice my and my neighbor's opposition to the use variance at 11 James Court, which is directly to the south of our residence, my wife and I. Our neighbors at 10 and 16 James Court are out of town and I'm unable to be here tonight. Those are the two that, or a couple of those that Attorney Judd read into the record. And additionally, Mr. Greco at 8 James Court also could not be here due to his work schedule. We built our home approximately 30 years ago after a lengthy search for property in Glens Falls on which to build. We had 2 young sons at the time and wanted to remain in the Glens Falls City School District, which we had a high opinion of, and I think it's paid dividends. Additionally, we had a strong desire to build in a single-family neighborhood. We had looked long and hard for existing homes, and none of them really suited us, and we were very fortunate to find this lot. The area we're currently in is zoned R1B, moderate density. Our neighbors and we spent substantial sums of money, probably the largest amount any of us will ever spend in our lifetimes, specifically to reside in a single-family neighborhood. It's my belief that we all have a reasonable expectation that the area would remain single-family residential, and therefore we are opposed to any change in the zoning classification. Once it's changed to two-family, it probably remain that way forever and will open the door to future changes. And additionally, a change of this one lot to two-family would appear to possibly be spot zoning, which was also mentioned, which is not allowed. So thank you for your time and consideration. Any questions for me? No? Again, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? So the opinion, the question I have for you guys is whether we continue to table this or whether we deny it.
Was he contacted prior?
Well, he would have been, right?
We've spoken with him multiple times since the January meeting, and we had asked for revisions to be done, and we haven't gotten the revisions to the application since then. So I stated, the two old businesses on the agenda, we don't believe they're going to show up tonight due to lack of communication with my office.
At this time, I would make a motion to deny it. If you want, he can always come back and ask again.
Ken?
I'll second
They
that.
don't always.
Okay.
So I make a motion to
Would you like
deny
to?
it this
Do you
time.
want this?
Oh, sure.
I'll second it.
Okay, well, what do we?
I agree.
I would like to make a motion that the Glens Falls Zoning Board of Appeal hereby deny the application for use variance for the project identified as Nevin Armando at location 11 James Court, Glens Falls, as presented at the meeting of March 18th, 2024, pursuant to the following criterion showing by the applicant, pursuing that the applicant did not show the following criteria as necessary for an area variance request. The applicant did not show that they cannot realize a reasonable return, and the lack of return. It's hard to do this in reverse.
summarize on the fly.
The applicant has not shown a hardship relating to the property that is unique and one that does not apply to a substantial portion of the district or neighborhood. The applicant has not shown that the requested use variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and the applicant has not shown that this hardship is not self-created.
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you. Do we need to do any kind of secret or anything?
Well, not if you're denying that.
Okay, good.
If you're denying it.
That makes sense. So let's do a roll call, starting with Dan. So we're, if you.
Motion to deny.
Motion to deny, so that would be I would deny.
Aye, would deny.
Anton?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
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 Unanimous.
So the use variance is denied.
Yep. Next up, we have a use variance for, use variance 23-0005, Lauren Blassingame. This is 17 Wilmot Street. This is where we were going to turn a monolithic two-family dwelling into a three-family dwelling. It's currently tabled. Have we gotten anything from them?
So, Phil Kanzler, code enforcement officer. I was going to bring this up in case Ms. Blossingame ever showed up. We have not had any contact with her since the initial application. So it's currently a two-family in an R1 district. After she had brought in the application, did a little research. Back in the 80s, the owner at the time, which we believe there's no relation, approved for a use variance, a converter from a R1 to a two-family, and that was denied. And today, it is a two-family. So that was going to be something that my office wanted to put on the record, that it is already a denied, illegally used parcel as it currently stands. That was denied by the zoning board in, I think, 1986, but don't hold me on that.
It's not even talk about lot coverage.
So, yeah, there was, so,
It's like fully lot coverage.
yeah, so to increase even further would be approving something that was denied previously by a different zoning board.
So how do you fix that?
How do you make them not be a two-family anymore when that's all just?
Well, it can be proven that it is illegal
Yeah.
two-family.
That's something that you know.
Is that, yeah? do you-
So it's a sticky area because there's a lot of pre-existing non-conforming in the city. I would say a good majority of the multifamily residents in this city are illegal non-conforming, but we treat them as pre-existing non-conforming because our records are substandard. I would have to talk further with Attorney Judd on the best practice to move forward.
It feels icky to kick somebody out of their apartment in this.
Yeah, it's not a commercial use where, however you got there, it got done. You know, we're talking about where someone lives and both units are currently
Well,
occupied.
this was, they're trying to make the development in an existing two-car garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this would, increase the usage of the site, it would also be a parking problem.
Yeah.
Um,
They actually, the way the code's written, when you go to a multifamily, when you go to a three-family, the requirements drop from 2 cars per to 1.5. So the actual increase isn't that much for the parking on the lot, but again, it's already being used in a non-compliant manner.
Well, then it hardly matters.
Yeah.
Want me to read it? Do you want
Yeah, you want to go for it?
This will be my first time, so.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so I read this round.
Basically, you're going to want to summarize our income. So when you get to the numbers, you need to sort of reword that.
All right, good luck. I'd like to make a motion that the Glens Falls zoning board of appeals hereby denying the applicant for the use variance
Yes?
for the project identified as use variance 23-0005,
17 Wilmot.
17 Wilmot, as presented at the board, or at the meeting of March 18th, pursuant to the following criteria. Which one do I use?
Oh,
The-
You just
so
started.
the applicant has.
The
not
applicant
shown-
has not shown substantial competent financial evidence. The hardship related to the property is unique and does not apply a substantial portion of the district or neighborhood. The request use variance will alter the essential characters of the neighborhood. And that's it, or?
The hardship has been self-created. Second is.
Second.
Emily wants the second. What do we do with another roll call? This is again a denial, so an aye vote will be a denial. So Dan?
Aye.
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 Unanimous, the motion is denied. Or the motion is approved, the application is
The
denied.
application is denied, there you go.
All right, and finally, thank you for your patience. We have new business, area variance 24-0002. This is, where's the address on this? 115? So the application for 109 and 115 and 117 Warren Street. So we're considering front yard setback, side yard setback, maximum building height, and maximum lot coverage relief.
Good evening. For your records, my name is Ethan Hall. I'm the principal with Rosinski Hall Architecture. Here tonight with Joe Sr. and Joe Jr. Lucci. They are the owners of Foothills Builders. Representing, they are the contract vendees for the property owned by Margaret Gerard. The property in question is the vacant lot. It used to be Daily Chrysler, Town and Country Chrysler. It's been pretty much vacant for the last, well, I moved here in '86. It was still operating 30 years. Yeah, it was still operating as Town and Country when I moved here, but that closed shortly thereafter. The portion that was the showroom and the garage portion of it was torn down when the Gerards bought it. They still operate. They still operate out of this building, which is just a big wide open, it was part of the storage unit there. And there is an old garage portion back here, which was, I believe, was part of the repair bay for bigger trucks and stuff. So this is the existing property layout. We are seeking a couple of area variances tonight. We're looking for a front yard setback. The blue line on this drawing represents the required setbacks. What we've done with the project is we've squared the building line to what is Simmons Heating and Cooling. So when we do that, it kind of skews the building a little bit, and I set the front corner there and it runs across, so we're a little bit over on our front yard setback. When you compare it to the church next door, we're set back about 11 feet from the front of their building, so we're farther back from where they are. We do need a side yard variance. Again, the building is a little bit skewed. We're 10 foot 4 inches here, where 15 feet is required. It's just the bump out in the building sticks out a little bit farther than what we could get. This allows us to get all the required parking in, and the area variance we felt was for the 2 setbacks that we were looking for it was better to ask for those than it was to try and play around with the site plan. The site plan would enter off of Warren Street. We have circulation throughout the site. I've met with the fire chief, the assistant fire chief, and we've gone over how they would access the building, how they would get vehicles in and out of there. They don't feel that there's an issue. We are going to be adding a hydrant up here. Our nearest hydrant is down here on the corner of Oakland and Warren Street, and then there's another one on the opposite side beyond. So they asked if we could put one there. We decided that that was a pretty decent idea. The height variances that we're seeking, and I'm going to switch to, I've got them shown on here in color, but I'm going to switch to the roof plan so I can show you the amount of area that we're asking for the height variances. 50 feet is the maximum height in this zone. Everything that's in white on this is the roof plan of the building. Everything that's in white here is at 50 feet or below. The part that's in red is the top of the elevator run by. In order to get to the roof, we have to provide the elevator to get there, so we have to provide the run by to get there. That's at 63 foot 10. So the amount, that's the overall height variance that we're seeking is 63 feet 10 inches, 13 feet and 10 inches above what's allowed.
And it's only for the.
It's only for that red portion. The portions that are in green are the elevator, or the stairwells. They're a little bit lower than that. They're at like 59 feet and change. And then the areas that are in purple are the parapets. And then the areas that are in yellow are the other parapets. So I've got a step in my parapet as it goes around the facade of the building. All of these parapets slope back into the building, none of them slope away. So any of the rainwater gets captured and brought back onto the roof of the building. So in the grand scheme of the things that we're asking for from this board, the red on here is what we're really looking for as far as height variance goes. The rest of them all are above the 50 feet, but that's the maximum height.
Plus or minus, what's the elevation of the parapets?
The ones that are in purple are about 5 feet above the roof. The ones that are in yellow are about 4 feet and change. So there's about a 16-inch variance.
You're developing a place that's going to be looking in, not looking out.
Correct. I mean, well, interestingly enough, when you get up on the roof of here, at 4 stories, and if you go to Stitchman Towers and go up to the 4th floor, you kind of look right over the top of Finch Pine. You really don't even see that it's there because you're up there. This is a rooftop terrace on the roof of this, so it would be the 5th floor of the building. When you're up there, you actually look over the top of things, and you can see to the mountains of Vermont out there, even from the 3rd floor of some of the buildings. We have to have them. We have to have railings if we didn't. So if we put the parapets up there, it's just a safety thing. I don't want somebody crawling up on there.
Might as well go a little higher and then decorate it instead of doing the 42 and it looks like hardwood.
Correct.
What
Correct.
are the general heights of the, I know it's a fairly open lot there, and there's some single, low slung buildings there. Are there any, what are the general heights of the taller buildings in that?
So if you look at Warren Square, which is just down the street, that's 3.5 stories. In total height, I would have to say they're above 50, but I don't think they're much above 50.
In general,
in general.
line with what we're looking
Yep.
at.
And then, of course, Stitchman Towers is 11 stories, something like that. The steeple of St. Mary's is the next building down, so we're not too far away from that. And then, of course, the Great Hall across the street is well above 50 feet as well.
School of St. Mary's is also.
Yeah. Right. So this is the elevation that has been in the paper. This is the elevation we've looking at it from Warren Street, and the 63 feet is to the top of this little piece right here. And
It's
that's
also set back from the front.
set back from Warren Street that far. How far back is that?
You might not even see that from the street, actually.
From the street, if you're coming from the east, coming westward, you probably won't see it because the stair tower will block it. And coming from the west towards the east, you won't see this building until you clear the end of the church that's there now. It used to be the old Lazarus building. Again, we've tried to do a mix of facade treatments to kind of break up the plane, to give it a visual break. We've used brick on the main floor and up the main entry area.
Will that be real brick?
Haven't gotten that far yet. At this point, I'm thinking it'll probably be cultured brick, a thin set brick, but we haven't gotten that far yet. The stone that we're showing on the bottom is a Versetta stone. It's the same stone that we used on the Park Street building.
That elevation you're showing there is from the parking lot side, right?
No, this is from Warren Street. This is from Warren Street.
Can
looking
you show the
towards-
plan where the main entrance is then? Because I must have missed that.
Okay, so that's the main entrance. This is the main entrance
Okay.
to the commercial space on the first floor. The main entry to the actual apartments on the upper floor is back here.
Right. Do you have an elevation of that?
Yes, it's further into your package, and I don't have it rendered because, well, it's actually here. This is looking at it from, if you're coming, this is looking west if you're coming from the east, looking towards the west. So this is around behind the building, and there's the elevator shaft up there. So, and this, you can see the trees on the roof. We do have some tree boxes in planters, things like that, so we've got a little bit of a green roof up there.
Oh, on the roof? That's cool.
Yeah, if any of you have been on the top of the Marriott, if anybody's been up to the top of the Marriott in Lake George, what we're talking about is the same treatment that we used when we did that. It's actually a raised platform. It's about 18 inches above the actual roof surface, so the water can flow through it, get to the roof drains, and get off.
So will that be public access?
No.
To the top?
Can we make our approval contingent on an invitation to go to the town?
I'm sure we can talk to Joe and have you get up there. But the rooftop terrace is for the tenants of the building.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the rest of the facade, like that beige color, is that stucco? Is that a?
It's an EIFS, yep.
Okay. And just to clarify, the brick is either going to be a cultured veneer brick or real brick,
Or
but
true
it
brick.
won't be cultured stone.
No, it'll be brick. I have 4 members of the planning board that will require it to be. That will require it to be red
That's
brick.
what I'm clarifying. Well, there's that.
Know your
To be
board.
honest with you, if you were walking by a building that's thin brick or regular,
No.
you'd have to be like touching it and
Yeah.
looking at the joint to feel
Absolutely.
or know the difference.
With
Aesthetically,
the stuff now, yes, I agree.
No, absolutely. That's
And it becomes a weight issue. I mean, with real brick, we have to provide lintels over everything, and with the cultured brick, we can just apply it to the exterior.
I just want to clarify, it's just like the ones up on Main Street that they're putting up.
Yes. Yeah, so the Lucci's are building the one that's at exit 18, coming in off of exit 18 right now, across from the Adirondack National building. So that one's 3 stories. It's a little bit smaller than this one.
I think this area's got a significant amount of mass around it, so I'm not put off at all by the elevation or massing of it.
One might even call it
What they're really
service.
asking for variance-wise isn't substantial.
The only other variance that we are seeking, of course, is lot coverage, and I know that that's been a hot button of debate tonight. So I just wanted to kind of go over that. The current lot, if you look at the coverage of the current lot as it is right now, and keep in mind, this was an automobile dealership. From Warren Street to this building back here is completely hard surface with 0 stormwater management. There is nothing there. They don't have an issue with water buildup or any of that kind of thing coming off from this site. It doesn't run off from it now. Going down off the back of the bank, we've looked at there's a retaining wall that's back here that we're going to leave. It's existing, we're going to leave it. And then this part is vegetated back here. Our engineering team is currently working on stormwater management. The idea is that we're gonna take the water from both sides, bring it to the middle, and let it percolate into the ground, so that it does not run
So
off
there's
the
green
site.
space in the middle there? Some,
No, we don't really have any green space. We've increased the green space here. We've actually made green space around here, and we've put green space kind of all around the building. Overall, the permeability of the site, once we're done, goes up from what it is now, but it's still not code compliant, so we do need the variance for that.
Can you refresh my memory what the lot coverage is that we're going to?
76.78, it's being reduced from 81.64.
Correct.
So it's a reduction.
Right. So we go from, currently the percent of permeable existing is 18.36%, and we're increasing it to 23.2. So,
it's a cool project, it has to be fun to design. I like it.
Yeah, and all that.
a couple of the things that I just want to point out as far as the parking goes, parking and loading. We do have parking all the way around the building, we do have loading. We're not counting any parking on the street based on required parking, and I know that's not the purview of this board, but we're required to have 98 spaces, I think we determined. We're providing 112. Of those, this first portion of parking up here is short-term parking only. And then we are providing some spaces back here, which would be for rideshare cars, like Zipcar, something like that. So
I guess, kind of walking into this question, if you're providing excessive parking, why can't you shift the lot back to remove the front and side setback variances?
because we don't know what's going to happen on the first floor.
Commercial.
The commercial space, depending on what tenant goes in
Maybe
there,
that tenant could want more.
though they could require one. So we really have, we've really kind of played a real guessing game and taking,
Okay.
if that winds up being a restaurant, the parking number goes up. If it winds up being retail, the number stays right where we've got it.
Actually, that's a good question. What's relative to Glen Street, for example, that sidewalk, how, I know like.
Quite a ways back, 18 feet.
18 feet?
So if I go to this one that I colored, this is the required setback. This purple line here. The actual property line is out here, and all of Warren Street sidewalk is beyond our property line. So, you know, we're proposing for this out here. You know, if that becomes a restaurant or something, they can do outdoor dining without having to get, without having to get an
It's like
encroachment
a
permit.
new meets old kind of situation. We're trying to fit this new.
That's great.
Right. And we are showing, you know, we're showing ground planters and things like that. They're not physically open space, but they would be, you know, tree planters and things like
But
that.
you're planning to definitely pave it, that whole front area.
This whole front area from the front of the building to the sidewalk would be hard surface, yeah. Just so that we don't have to come back in the future and say,
Concrete or pavement?
likely concrete. Yeah, it'll hold up better.
Absolutely.
It'll actually meet the concrete sidewalk that's there.
The back line of the property, is there any green space, any vegetation?
Well,
planned
from
there?
here all the way down to Oakland Avenue, this is all green and is gonna remain green. It's not green right now, it's dark brown.
Sure.
But when in the summertime, that actually, the foliage comes out fairly heavy. It's fairly thick. You really can't walk up that hill right now.
Phase two has storage units.
On the first floor,
Okay, are those going to be for residents of the apartments, or is it going to be commercial?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect answer.
At this point, it is climate controlled storage. We looked at, everybody agrees that there's an abundance of available commercial space in the city. So we got together with the Lucci's, tried to figure out what's the best use for this. And we came up with climate controlled storage, which there's very little of. And if you look at the apartment layouts, any apartments, and the front ones are obviously the higher end tenancies. The ones in the back are workforce. These are workforce housing. They're 1 bedroom, 1 bath. They mimic very closely the units that they're building at Exit 18 right now. And they're very nice units, but they'll be at a workforce housing cost. So they'll be, affordable housing for 3 stories worth. But with limited storage,
They're gonna need some storage.
they're still gonna need some storage.
That's apartments in general.
So it's nice to be able to offer that to the tenants right in their building.
Do all the units, sorry, just a side note, do all the units have their own washing and drying?
Yes.
Just for curiosity's sake, do you know what the apartments will go?
We don't at this point. I'd love to be able to tell you, but until we run through the whole market analysis, it's really hard to give that number. And we do have this set up so that, and it really depends on how their funding works out. We have this set up where we can build this as phase 1 and this as phase 2 if the funding doesn't work out to build the whole thing all at once. I mean, the intent would be to build it all at once if funding comes through for it.
So why don't we move on, and we'll call you back if we have more questions.
Sure.
I think we have people from the public who might like
Yeah,
to speak.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please step up, state your name and address for the
Yes,
record.
good evening. My name is Drew Gardner. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Finch Paper LLC, located at 1 Glen Street, Glens Falls, New York. As many of you are aware, Finch has operated a paper mill at its current location for almost 160 years and is one of the largest employers in the area. Finch is located in the city's heavy industrial zone. However, it is roughly 1 city block of the proposed residential development. Typically, cities are zoned so that there is a large buffer between heavy industrial use and residential use. You would typically look to have heavy industrial areas followed by light industrial areas, followed by commercial areas, followed by mixed-use areas, only then followed by residential use. Because of the city's unique zoning, we understand it's not practical for those buffers to be present in all cases. Given the lack of these buffer areas, Finch has gone to great lengths to not only be in compliance with all local codes, but also to further mitigate odor and noise that can and should be expected from our type of industrial use. To list a few examples, Finch is one of only 2 paper manufacturers in North America that utilize an ammonium bisulfite process, which has significantly lower odor levels as compared to the far more common craft paper production processes. Additionally, as a part of our process to upgrade our wood yard in 2015, we added additional expense to our debarker design so as to soften noise output from the system. Despite these efforts, there are still ambient baseline levels of noise that come with all industrial uses like ours. We would encourage the applicant and the city to take these conditions into consideration when designing and reviewing the proposed development. Thank you for your time. Any questions? Yeah, please.
So I appreciate you coming here and
Yeah.
saying this. I'm gathering, you're basically just saying, listen, guys, understand that we're doing our best here, but you're gonna have some smells and noises.
That's exactly right.
All right.
That's
So I
exactly
just
right.
wanna-
Yeah,
I just
and
want to throw that out there, and I appreciate.
yeah, no, we get complaints from the local residents all the time, and we're in compliance with everything, but they still come up.
And this is a GC too.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
GC too, so.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah, no, just want to get it on the record, but yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
well ahead of the curve on this one.
So Ethan,
Thank you.
where's Ethan? I can't see. Is there any consideration as far as soundproof windows or improved windows,
So
ventilation?
we've already taken that into account. That was one of the first things that we talked about when the Lucci's chose this lot. We're fully aware that we're sitting right on top of Finch Brine. So yeah, we've taken that into account. We've looked at using better sound insulation in the walls, getting things like thicker glass, better sound transmission glass. All of these units will have self-contained air conditioning and heat units. So we've got that all.
Individual?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, every one of them will have their own individual unit.
How many units?
60. So yes,
It would be a big change for downtown.
we are well aware that Finch is there, and I believe that anybody who rents an apartment will be well aware of that as
What if
well.
we're saying that, like,
But at least they won't have barking dogs next door.
Right.
That's gone now.
is that going away?
What's that?
That's going away?
It's already gone. Yeah, Simmons Heating and Cooling is in there now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. So Glens Falls K9 is completely gone.
All
right, thank you.
Sure.
Any questions, comments, opinions?
Anything from buildings?
Is he still back there?
Yes.
Is there anything that you'd like to add to this, or?
We've already reviewed this with the applicant before they submitted. At this time, we have no comment.
Right. The applicant also went before the planning board for a sketch plan review, just to get some ideas from the planning board, to see if there was any particular plan that they wanted to add. So, if they get your approval here tonight, Ethan, are you prepared to go back to the April 2nd meeting, or will you not be ready?
I'm gonna say likely not.
Okay.
Our engineering team is working on stormwater management, doing that kind of thing. We have gone as far as, we've done the geotechnical work. We've been in there and done all the soil borings, so we know what we've got subsurface. Our geotech said, hey, at like 23 feet, we found some organic matter in a little pocket. We don't know if that's fill. I'm like, at 23 feet
23
down,
feet.
I doubt it's fill. I doubt it's, I mean, we are right on the edge of the Hudson. I'm sure that that's been there since, since the beginning.
You're
So,
not gonna have a basement here.
partial. There will be a partial basement. Most of it is.
Is that for the retail?
No, it's more for running utilities and stuff.
Okay.
We've got a small portion of it. Actually, this is the basement. Because we're having to bring in new electric service, new water service, things of that nature. We've got a small electrical room here. We do have a utility corridor that comes across. We will have additional utilities in the basement here for sprinkler riser, things of that nature. And then all of this building has no basement. That's all slab on grade. So we obviously have the elevator pit that we have to get in and things like that. But we didn't hit any groundwater, which was good news. So to answer your question, Karen, will we be ready to come back for the April 2nd meeting? Seeing how the submission date was last Wednesday?
Oh.
Well, your whole business, so that's different.
I know, but still, I don't think we're gonna have enough together to really make a full-blown presentation. I think we would rather do it in May, knowing that we have all of our ducks in a row.
I guess I'll make a motion.
Well, let's just.
Oh, seeker.
With
Always
respect
forget
to
seeker.
seeker, I would classify this as an unlisted action, therefore we are reviewing the part 2 impact assessment. Number 1, will the proposed action create material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? No. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of the use of land? It's GC2, so the answer should be no. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
No.
No. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in existing level of traffic or existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact public-private water supplies?
No.
Not substantial. Public-private wastewater treatment utilities? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
No.
No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in natural resources?
No.
No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health?
No.
No. Based upon the board's review, you could issue a negative declaration.
I would like to do that, but I lost my paper again.
Before we make a motion,
Sure.
there is an indication that this subject property would be, would need a 239 review.
Oh, county.
Did we get a county review?
I believe it was.
It was sent.
It was sent.
Okay.
Just because of 500 yards, we're telling you, right?
Alright, so in regards to seeker, I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion that the Glens Falls Zoning Board of Appeals hereby accepts lead agency status for, what do we call this project?
Area variance.
Area variance 24-0002. Owner or agent of the property located at 109 to 115 to Spill 17 Warren Street, which is East Margaret Gerard. The board has determined that this action is a type unlisted action, and we have reviewed the short form environmental assessment form, and upon the documentation and discussion, we issue a negative declaration. Now,
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, it's unanimous. And there's another. 1 second. All right, so the area variance, I'd like to make a motion that the Glens Falls Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grant the application for its area variance for the project identified as area variance 24-0002 and located at the address 109 and 115 to 117 Warren, as presented at the meeting of March 18th, pursuant to the following criteria and showing by the applicant that an undesirable change will not be produced in the character of the neighborhood, and that there will not be a detriment to nearby properties by granting the area variance. And that, actually, in my opinion, the nearby properties will, it's going to be an improvement to that. The benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other feasible method. That the area variance, while it may be substantial, it is necessary in melding the new building to the old buildings around it. The proposed variance will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood or district. In fact, I believe it is going to improve that condition. And the alleged difficulty, while it may be self-created, does not preclude the granting of the area variance.
And so it's a front yard setback of 6 foot 1 inch relief, side yard 4 foot 8 inch relief, building height 13 feet 10 inches relief, and lot coverage 16.78% relief.
I'll second it.
Okay, who gets the second?
Matt.
Matt again, the second roll. Let's go do a roll call vote. This is approval, so aye is approved. Go ahead.
Aye.
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 All right, it is unanimous.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So on that note, I hereby move to adjourn. Take a motion to adjourn. There a second. There you go. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?